standing outside his own office building, locked out, waiting for over 30 minutes. Keanu Reeves, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, the man who made billions for Hollywood, stood there patiently while his own employees ignored him, made him wait, treated him like he was nobody. But they didn't know who was standing outside. They didn't recognize the humble man in simple clothes. And when they finally realized their catastrophic mistake, it was too late. Keanu Reeves had seen something that day that he could never unsee. The true character of the people he had trusted to represent him. In this video, you'll discover the shocking true story of what happened that day in Los Angeles. How Keanu's legendary humility led to a moment that revealed the arrogance and cruelty of his own team. What he witnessed while standing outside that changed everything. And why he made the decision to fire every single person in that office, starting completely over. Stay until the end because I'll reveal what Keanu discovered about his executives, the powerful lesson this teaches about character and humility, and why this story proves that how you treat people when you think nobody important is watching reveals who you really are. Los Angeles, California. Summer of 2019, the entertainment industry capital of the world, where dreams are made and destroyed, where billion-dollar deals happen over lunch, and where ego and status define most interactions. In this world of superficiality and pretension, Keanu Reeves had always been an anomaly, a contradiction, a mystery to those who valued appearances above all else. Keanu Charles Reeves was born September 2nd, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon. By 2019, he was 54 years old and one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood. His career spanned over 3 decades. He had starred in some of the most successful franchises in film history. The Matrix trilogy, which revolutionized action cinema and generated over $3 billion worldwide. The John Wick series, which revitalized the action genre and created a cultural phenomenon. Speed, Point Break, Constantine, Bill and Ted. The list went on and on. But despite all this success, despite the fame and fortune, Keanu remained remarkably unchanged by Hollywood standards. He was famous for his humility, his kindness, his genuine nature in an industry notorious for fake smiles and shallow relationships. Stories about Keanu's character were legendary. He once gave away most of his Matrix earnings to the costume and special effects teams because he felt they deserved it more than he did. He regularly took pay cuts so that films could afford to hire other talented actors. He rode the subway to work. He sat on sidewalks eating sandwiches with homeless people. He bought motorcycles for the stunt team on his films. He visited children's hospitals without publicity. He dated regular people, not supermodels or actresses seeking attention. In 2019, Keanu's career was experiencing a massive renaissance. John Wick Chapter 3 had just been released that May and made over $300 million worldwide. He was hotter than ever, more in demand than he'd been in years. And with that success came the need for business management, for a team of executives and assistants to handle his career, his finances, his schedule, his investments. Keanu had a production company called Company Films, which he had founded years earlier. The company had offices in a mid-rise building in West Los Angeles. Nothing flashy, nothing ostentatious. The office suite took up the entire 4th floor with about 15 employees. Executives, assistants, accountants, lawyers, all supposedly working on Keanu's behalf to manage his business affairs. The problem was that Keanu himself rarely came to the office. He was usually on location filming, or at his home when not working, or riding his motorcycle somewhere. He trusted his team to handle things. He had hired them based on recommendations from industry colleagues. He paid them well, and he assumed, perhaps naively, that they would operate with the same integrity and humility that he tried to embody. But what Keanu didn't realize was that in his absence, a culture had developed in that office that was the complete opposite of everything he stood for. The executives who ran his company had become arrogant, entitled, drunk on the proximity to fame and power, even though it wasn't their fame or their power. They had started treating the office like their personal kingdom, treating anyone they deemed beneath them with contempt and dismissiveness. The person running day-to-day operations was a man named Richard Thornton. Richard was 42 years old, an MBA from USC, slick hair, expensive suits, the epitome of Hollywood business culture. He had been hired 3 years earlier to be Keanu's business manager, and over time had consolidated more and more control over the company's operations. Richard was good at his job in terms of numbers. He managed Keanu's investments competently, negotiated decent deals. But he was also arrogant, condescending, and had a particular disdain for what he called regular people. Under Richard's leadership, the office culture became toxic. The executives would arrive in luxury cars that they leased with inflated expense accounts. They would have catered lunches from expensive restaurants delivered daily. They would conduct meetings in the conference room that were more about gossip and self-congratulation than actual work. And worst of all, they had developed a habit of treating service workers, delivery people, maintenance staff, anyone they perceived as below their status, with open contempt. Security guards were ignored. Cleaning staff were yelled at. Delivery drivers were kept waiting. Anyone who came to the office who didn't look important or wealthy was treated as an inconvenience, an interruption to their important work. The receptionist, a young woman named Jessica, who had only been there 6 months, had been trained by Richard and the other executives to be equally dismissive to anyone who didn't have an appointment or didn't look like they belonged. Keanu had no idea about any of this. When he did occasionally call the office or have video conferences with Richard about business matters, everything seemed fine. The numbers were good. The deals were decent. Richard and his team presented themselves as professional and competent. Keanu, trusting and focused on his acting work, had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. Until the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning in early August 2019. Keanu was in Los Angeles between projects, taking a rare few weeks off before starting preparation for John Wick Chapter 4. He had decided on a whim to actually visit his office in person. He hadn't been there in almost a year. He thought it would be nice to surprise everyone, to meet with his team face to face, to thank them for their work, maybe take everyone out for lunch. Keanu being Keanu, he didn't call ahead to announce he was coming. He didn't want any special preparation or fuss. He just wanted to drop by casually, the way a normal person might drop by their workplace. He dressed in his typical style: jeans, black t-shirt, motorcycle boots, and a worn leather jacket despite the California heat. He rode his motorcycle from his house to the office building, parked in the visitor parking because he didn't have an assigned spot, and walked into the building carrying his helmet. The building itself was a typical Los Angeles mid-rise office building, 10 floors, glass and steel, with a small lobby and elevator bank. Keanu took the elevator to the 4th floor where his company's offices were located. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped out into a hallway with glass doors at the end that led to the company film suite. He walked to the glass doors and tried to open them. They were locked. There was a buzzer system with an intercom next to the door. Through the glass, Keanu could see the reception area, and he could see Jessica sitting at the desk, talking on her cell phone, laughing about something. Keanu pressed the buzzer and waited. Jessica glanced up briefly, saw a man in jeans and a t-shirt with a motorcycle helmet, and went back to her phone conversation without responding to the buzzer. She had been trained that people who looked like that were probably delivery people or random walk-ins, not important enough to interrupt her personal call. Keanu waited about 30 seconds, then buzzed again. This time, Jessica looked up with visible annoyance. She put her call on hold, pressed the intercom button, and said curtly, "Yes, what do you want?" Keanu, not offended because he understood he probably didn't look like someone important, said politely into the intercom, "Hi, I'm here to see Richard Thornton and the team. Is everyone available?" Jessica rolled her eyes, clearly irritated at having her personal call interrupted. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her tone making it clear she already knew the answer. "No, I don't," Keanu admitted. "I was just hoping to drop by." "We don't accept walk-ins," Jessica said dismissively. "If you want to schedule a meeting, you can send an email to the general contact address on our website. Someone will get back to you in 5 to 7 business days." And with that, she released the intercom button and and went back to her phone call. Keanu stood there, slightly puzzled but not angry. He buzzed again. Jessica, now clearly irritated, slammed her phone down, marched to the door, and spoke to him through the glass without opening it. "Look, I already told you, no walk-ins. I don't know who you are or what you want, but this is a private office. You can't just show up here expecting to be let in. Now please leave before I call security." Keanu smiled, that gentle, patient smile that millions of fans knew from his movies. "I understand, and I apologize for not calling ahead, but if you could just tell Richard that Keanu is here, I think he'll want to see me." Jessica stared at him for a moment. "Keanu who?" she asked. This caught Keanu off guard. How could the receptionist at his own company not know his name? But he patiently replied, "Keanu Reeves. This is my company. Richard works for me." Jessica's expression changed from annoyed to skeptical. She looked him up and down. The worn jeans, the simple black t-shirt, the scuffed motorcycle boots, the messy hair from wearing a helmet. This did not look like a famous movie star. This looked like someone trying to scam their way into the office. "Right," she said sarcastically, "and I'm Beyoncé. Look, buddy, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but Mr. Thornton is a very busy man, and he doesn't have time for pranks. Now I'm serious. Leave now or I'm calling security." Keanu realized what was happening. She genuinely didn't recognize him. In fairness, he looked very different from his red carpet appearances, and this young woman had probably been trained to turn away anyone who didn't fit a certain image of importance. "Okay," Keanu said calmly. "I understand. Could you perhaps call Richard on the phone and let him know I'm here? Just describe me and tell him I'm at the door. He'll know who I am." Jessica sighed heavily, making it clear this was a huge imposition, but she walked back to her desk and picked up the phone. Keanu couldn't hear what she was saying, but he could see her gesturing toward the door while she talked. Then she hung up and returned to the glass door. "Mr. Thornton says he's in an important meeting and can't be disturbed. He suggests you send a fan letter if you want an autograph or something, because Mr. Reeves doesn't actually work here and wouldn't just show up randomly." She said this with a smug smile, as if she'd caught him in his lie. Now Keanu was beginning to understand that this was more than just a simple misunderstanding. He decided to wait. He moved to the side of the hallway where there was a bench, sat down with his helmet beside him, and simply waited patiently. He wasn't angry. He was actually curious now. What exactly was happening in his office that his own name was treated like a joke? Jessica went back to her desk, back to her phone call, occasionally glancing at the weird guy sitting in the hallway, but otherwise ignoring him. 20 minutes passed. Keanu sat quietly, occasionally checking his phone, mostly just observing. Through the glass doors, he could see and hear snippets of office life. He saw executives walking around, talking loudly about their expensive purchases, complaining about service at restaurants he knew cost more for one meal than many families spent on groceries for a month. He saw someone yelling at what appeared to be a delivery person, berating them for being 3 minutes late. Then he saw something that truly disturbed him. An elderly maintenance worker, probably in his 70s, came to the glass door, pushing a cart with cleaning supplies. He knocked on the door. Jessica looked up, saw it was just the janitor, and completely ignored him. The old man knocked again. Jessica made an exaggerated, annoyed gesture and finally buzzed him in. As the maintenance worker came through the door, struggling with his heavy cart, Keanu heard Jessica say rudely, "You're early. You're not supposed to be here until after 5. Now you're going to be in everyone's way and making noise while we're trying to work." The old man apologized quietly, explaining that he had other buildings to clean and had to adjust his schedule. Jessica cut him off. "I don't care about your schedule. Do your job and stay out of our way, and make sure you don't touch anything on the desks. Last time something went missing, and we know it was you people." The old man, looking hurt and humiliated, just nodded and began slowly pushing his cart down the hallway toward the interior offices. As he struggled past where Keanu was sitting, Keanu stood up and held the door open for him, helping guide the heavy cart through. "Thank you, sir," the old man said gratefully. "Most people here don't even see me." "I see you," Keanu said warmly, "and thank you for keeping the place clean. That's important work." The old man looked at Keanu for a moment, seemed like he might recognize him, but wasn't sure, then smiled and continued on his way. Keanu returned to his bench and continued observing. 30 minutes had now passed since he first buzzed the door. Keanu was still sitting patiently on the bench in the hallway. He had made no fuss, caused no problem. He was simply waiting. Most people in his position would have left long ago, or demanded entry, or called their lawyer, but Keanu was genuinely curious to see how this would play out. He took out his phone and did something he rarely did. He looked at social media, specifically at the accounts associated with company films. What he found disturbed him. The company Instagram account was filled with photos of his executives at industry parties, expensive restaurants, luxury events, all implying that they were important industry players in their own right, barely mentioning that they worked for Keanu Reeves. The LinkedIn profiles of Richard and the other executives listed impressive-sounding titles and achievements, taking credit for Keanu's success as if it were theirs. This was wrong. This was everything Keanu had worked his whole career to avoid. The ego, the pretension, the using of other people's work for personal glorification. He was deep in thought when he heard the elevator ding and saw several people get off. One of them was a young woman, probably mid-20s, carrying a large tray of expensive coffee drinks from a high-end cafe, clearly doing a coffee run for the office. She was struggling with the heavy tray, and as she approached the glass doors, she fumbled trying to reach for the buzzer while holding the tray. Keanu immediately stood up and pressed the buzzer for her. "Let me help you with that," he said, holding the buzzer while she balanced the tray. "Oh, thank you so much," she said gratefully. "These executives order the most complicated drinks and then complain if they're not perfect. I'm just the assistant intern, and they have me running errands all day." The door buzzed open, and Keanu held it for her as she carefully maneuvered the tray through. "That sounds frustrating," Keanu said sympathetically. "They should appreciate you more." The young woman looked at him with surprise, as if kindness from a stranger was unexpected. "You're very nice," she said. "Are you visiting someone?" "Supposedly," Keanu said with a slight smile. "But I've been waiting about 40 minutes now." "Oh, wow, that's terrible. Who are you here to see?" "Richard Thornton," Keanu replied. The intern's expression darkened. "Oh, good luck with that. Well, I probably shouldn't say, but he's not the easiest person to deal with." Before Keanu could respond, Jessica's voice cut through the air. "Ashley, stop gossiping and bring those coffees in here, and they better not be cold." Ashley, the intern, jumped slightly at the harsh tone, gave Keanu an apologetic look, and hurried inside with the coffee tray. The door swung shut behind her, automatically locking again. Keanu returned to his bench. He had now been waiting for 45 minutes. He decided to wait 1 full hour. If after an hour his own employees still hadn't bothered to acknowledge him, he would know everything he needed to know about the character of the people running his company. He watched as Ashley delivered the coffees to various offices. Through the glass, he could see executives barely acknowledging her, some not even looking up from their phones when she handed them their drinks. No thank yous. No courtesy. Just entitlement. Finally, at approximately the 50-minute mark, the elevator dinged again, and another man got off. Someone Keanu actually recognized. It was Marcus Johnson, an industry friend and fellow producer who had an office in the same building. Marcus saw Keanu sitting on the bench, and his eyes went wide with surprise. "Keanu? Is that you? What are you doing sitting out here in the hallway?" "Hey, Marcus," Keanu greeted warmly, standing to shake hands. "I'm trying to get into my own office, actually, but they won't let me in." Marcus was confused. "What? That's your company in there. Why would they? Wait, they don't know you're here?" "Oh, they know someone named Keanu is here, claiming to be me," Keanu explained. "They just don't believe it." Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to anger. You've got to be kidding me. How long have you been waiting? About 50 minutes. 50 minutes? Marcus was livid. That's insane. Come on, I'm getting you in there right now. Marcus marched to the door and buzzed insistently. Jessica answered with her usual annoyed tone. Yes? This is Marcus Johnson. I need to speak with Richard immediately. Tell him it's urgent. The name Marcus Johnson apparently carried weight because Jessica's tone changed immediately. Oh, Mr. Johnson. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. The door buzzed open instantly. Marcus held the door for Keanu. After you. This is going to be interesting. They walked into the reception area together. Jessica looked up from her desk, saw Marcus, and started to greet him warmly. Then saw the crazy guy in jeans with him, and her expression faltered. Mr. Johnson, how can we help you today? You can start, Marcus said coldly, by explaining why Keanu Reeves, the owner of this company, has been sitting outside in the hallway for nearly an hour because you refused to let him in. The color drained from Jessica's face. She looked at Keanu, really looked at him for the first time, and recognition finally dawned. The facial features, the build, the calm demeanor. Oh God, it really was him. Mr. Reeves, I am so sorry. I didn't recognize you. You look so different in person. I thought you were just some random person trying to... She was stammering, panicking. It's all right, Keanu said gently, though his eyes were cold in a way they rarely were. Where's Richard? He's in the conference room with the other executives. They've been in a meeting. I told him you were here, but he said... Jessica stopped, realizing how bad this was about to sound. He said what? Keanu asked quietly. Jessica swallowed hard. He said you wouldn't just show up randomly and that whoever was at the door was probably some fan or con artist and I should send them away. Keanu nodded slowly, processing this. Take me to the conference room, please. Jessica, now terrified, stood up on shaky legs and led the way down the hallway. Marcus walked beside Keanu, quietly furious on his friend's behalf. As they passed through the office, other employees glanced up, did double takes as they recognized Keanu, and sudden panic spread through the office as people realized what had happened. They reached the conference room. Through the glass walls, Keanu could see Richard and about 8 other executives sitting around the table, laughing, eating expensive catered food. One of them was actually throwing food at another as a joke. Papers were scattered everywhere. This didn't look like a serious business meeting. It looked like people goofing off on someone else's dime. Jessica knocked hesitantly on the conference room door. Richard looked up, saw her, and his face twisted with annoyance. He got up and opened the door partway, deliberately not inviting them in. What is it? Richard snapped at Jessica. I told you we're not to be disturbed. Before Jessica could answer, Keanu stepped into view. Hello, Richard. Sorry to interrupt your meeting. Richard's face went through a series of remarkable transformations in about 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally terror. Keanu, what are you... When did you... Nobody told me you were... Actually, Keanu said calmly, Jessica told you I was here almost an hour ago. You chose not to believe her. Behind Richard, the other executives had spotted Keanu, and the room went deadly silent. Everyone was frozen, staring at the boss they had never expected to actually see in person. Can I come into my own conference room? Keanu asked, the question making Richard flinch because it highlighted exactly how absurd this situation was. Of course. Yes. Please. Richard stumbled over himself, opening the door wider. I'm so sorry for the confusion. I had no idea you were planning to visit. If I had known, I would have... You would have what? Keanu interrupted, his voice still calm, but with an edge to it now. Cleaned up the mess? Hidden the $500 catered lunch? Pretended to be doing actual work instead of throwing food at each other like children? The executives around the table looked like they wanted to disappear. Several were desperately trying to clean up the food mess, making it worse. Keanu walked into the conference room, Marcus following. Keanu looked around slowly, taking in every detail. The expensive food, the mess, the lack of any actual work materials, the designer suits that he knew were being expensed to his company, the luxury watches and accessories. "Tell me, Richard," Keanu said, his voice dangerously quiet. "What exactly have you all been working on in this very important meeting that couldn't be interrupted?" Richard stammered. "We were discussing, strategic initiatives for Q4 and—" "Stop," Keanu said. "Just stop. You know what I've been doing for the last hour? I've been sitting outside in the hallway watching how people in this office treat other people. I watched the receptionist be rude and dismissive to anyone she deemed unimportant. I watched someone berate an elderly maintenance worker. I watched a young intern be treated like dirt while fetching expensive coffees for all of you. I watched executives strutting around like they owned the place, throwing around my money like it's theirs." He paused, looking each person in the eye. "I watched all of this while waiting outside my own office because none of you could be bothered to check if maybe, just maybe, the person asking to see you might actually be who he said he was. You know what that tells me? It tells me that you've all become so arrogant, so entitled, so caught up in the appearance of power that you've forgotten whose power you're borrowing. It tells me that you treat people terribly when you think no one important is watching." Richard tried to salvage the situation. "Keanu, I understand you're upset, but this is all just a misunderstanding. If you'd called ahead, we could have—" "Could have what?" Keanu's voice rose slightly for the first time. "Could have pretended to be different people than you actually are? That's the problem, Richard. I didn't want you to prepare. I wanted to see who you really are when you think I'm not around. And I saw it. All of it." He took a breath, centering himself, returning to his calm demeanor. "I started this company because I wanted a team I could trust, people who shared my values, people who understood that success isn't an excuse to treat others badly. But instead, I've been funding a boys' club where people use my name and my money to feel important while treating anyone they see as beneath them like garbage." "Keanu, please," Richard pleaded, "give us a chance to make this right. We can change. We can—" "No," Keanu said firmly. "You can't. Character isn't something you change overnight. What I saw today isn't a mistake or a bad day. It's who you are when you think no one's holding you accountable. And I will not have my name associated with that kind of behavior." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Hi, this is Keanu Reeves. I need my attorney to come to my office immediately." "Yes, the company film's office. We'll be doing a complete restructuring. I'll need termination paperwork for everyone currently employed here." "Yes, everyone. Thank you." He hung up and looked around the room. "You're all fired. Effective immediately. My attorney will be here within the hour to handle the paperwork and escort everyone out. You'll receive your final paychecks and any owed benefits according to your contracts. But as of right now, none of you work for me anymore." The room erupted in protests, excuses, apologies. Richard was practically begging, "Keanu, you can't do this. We have contracts. We have rights. You can't just fire everyone." "Actually, I can," Keanu said calmly. "And I am. You want to talk about contracts? My lawyers will be happy to review every expense account, every purchase order, every dollar you've spent. I have a feeling we're going to find some interesting things once we audit the books. So I suggest you take the generous severance I'm offering and consider it a gift. Because if you push me on this, I will push back, and you won't like what we discover." That shut Richard up. Because Keanu was right. If they started digging into how company money had been spent, a lot of questionable expenses would come to light. "I want everyone out of this office in 2 hours," Keanu continued. "Pack your personal belongings. Leave all company property, including laptops, phones, and files. Security will be here to supervise the exit." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "One more thing. Ashley, the intern who brought you all your coffees. She's getting a severance package too, but I'm also writing her a recommendation letter for any job she wants. Because in the hour I've been here, she's shown more courtesy and work ethic than all of you combined." With that, Keanu walked out, Marcus beside him. As they walked through the office toward the exit, employees were staring, some crying, some angry, all shocked. When they reached Jessica's desk, Keanu stopped. "Jessica," he said gently but firmly, "I hope this teaches you something important. You never know who you're talking to. More importantly, you should treat everyone with respect, regardless of who they are. The way you treat people when you think they're nobody important reveals your true character. Work on that." Jessica, tears streaming down her face, could only nod. Keanu and Marcus left the office, the door closing behind them. As they waited for the elevator, Marcus shook his head in amazement. "I can't believe that happened. How are you so calm?" "I'm not calm inside," Keanu admitted. "I'm angry and disappointed, but losing my temper wouldn't accomplish anything. Actions speak louder than anger." "What are you going to do now? You need to rebuild your entire team." "I know," Keanu said, "and this time, I'm going to be much more careful. I'm going to hire people who share my values, not just people with impressive resumes. I'm going to be more involved, more present. This is on me for being too trusting and too absent." The elevator arrived and they stepped in. As the doors closed, Marcus said, "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Those people showed you who they were. You believed them." "Maya Angelou," Keanu said. "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." Within a month, Keanu had completely rebuilt his team with carefully vetted individuals who understood that working for him meant embodying the values of respect, humility, and kindness that he lived by. The new office culture was the complete opposite of what it had been. People were kind to everyone who entered. Interns were treated with respect. Service workers were thanked, and everyone understood that character mattered more than credentials. The story of what happened that day did eventually leak to the press, though Keanu never confirmed the details publicly. But people who heard it from various sources shared it online, and it became part of the Keanu Reeves legend. The story of how he fired his entire team after they left him waiting outside his own office. This story teaches us profound lessons that everyone needs to hear. First and most obvious, treat everyone with respect and kindness, always, because you never know who you're dealing with. But more than that, because it's the right thing to do, regardless of who they are. Second, character is revealed when we think no one important is watching. Richard and his team treated people terribly because they thought Keanu would never find out. But character isn't about performing for an audience. It's about who you are when no one is watching, or when you think the only people watching don't matter. Third, humility is not weakness. Keanu could have made a scene, could have demanded to be let in, could have called his lawyer immediately. Instead, he waited patiently and observed. His humility gave him the information he needed to make the right decision. Sometimes being quiet and patient reveals more than being loud and demanding. Fourth, trust must be earned and verified. Keanu had trusted his team to run things while he focused on his craft. But trust without accountability enabled bad behavior. It's okay to trust people, but it's also wise to occasionally verify that the trust is deserved. Fifth, money and proximity to power corrupt people unless they have strong character to begin with. Richard and his team weren't necessarily bad people when they started, but having access to Keanu's money and name without accountability or oversight corrupted them. They started believing their borrowed power was actually theirs. Sixth, taking decisive action when you discover betrayal of values is necessary, even when it's hard. Keanu could have given second chances, could have believed promises to change, but he knew that the behavior he witnessed was too deeply ingrained. Sometimes you have to cut losses and start over. The Bible speaks directly to these issues in multiple places. James chapter 2 verses 1 to 9 warns against showing favoritism based on wealth or appearance. My brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ must not show favoritism. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, "Here's a good seat for you," but say to the poor man, "You stand there," or "Sit on the floor by my feet," have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? This is exactly what happened. Keanu, dressed simply, was dismissed and disrespected, while people in expensive clothes were fawned over. This is the favoritism the Bible explicitly condemns. Proverbs 11:2 tells us, "When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom." Richard and his team's pride in their positions, their arrogance toward others, ultimately brought them disgrace and unemployment. Keanu's humility gave him the wisdom to see the truth and act on it. And perhaps most relevant, Matthew 23:12 says, "For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." The executives exalted themselves, treating others as beneath them, and were humbled by being fired. Keanu humbled himself, patiently sitting in a hallway, and was ultimately exalted as the entire story became a testament to his character. The lesson for all of us is clear. Treat every person you encounter with respect, kindness, and dignity, not because they might be someone important in disguise, but because every person is made in the image of God and deserves to be treated with honor. The janitor, the intern, the delivery driver, the receptionist, they all deserve the same courtesy you would give to a CEO or celebrity. And if you find yourself in a position of power or authority, remember that it's not actually yours. You're a steward of that power, not the owner of it. Use it to lift others up, not to put them down. Use it to serve, not to lord over people. Keanu Reeves didn't have to fire his entire team. He's wealthy enough that whatever money they wasted barely dented his fortune. But he did it because character matters more than convenience. Because how we treat people matters more than business efficiency. Because standing up for what's right matters more than avoiding conflict. If this story inspired you, please share with someone who needs to hear this message about character, humility, and how we treat others, and subscribe to the channel. And remember, you are always being watched. If not by people, then by God. Make sure what is revealed when people are watching is something you're proud of. As the afternoon sun dipped lower over Los Angeles, Keanu Reeves walked out of the building the same way he had entered it earlier that day. Quietly, without spectacle, without a single word to the press. He put on his helmet, climbed onto his motorcycle, and rode away. To anyone watching from the street, it looked like nothing more than an ordinary man leaving an office building. Inside, everything had changed. Within hours, the once arrogant office was silent. Desks were cleared. Company phones were handed back. Expensive suits moved slowly through hallways that no longer felt powerful. What hurt most wasn't losing their jobs. It was the realization that they hadn't been exposed for incompetence, but for who they truly were when they thought no one important was watching. In the days that followed, Keanu returned, not with cameras, not with announcements, but with intention. The first person he spoke to wasn't a new executive. It was the elderly maintenance worker. Keanu thanked him personally, increased the cleaning staff's contract, and made sure every worker in that building was treated with dignity going forward. Ashley, the intern, received a full severance, a personal recommendation letter, and an introduction to a respected producer who would later hire her full-time. Keanu never called it charity. He called it fairness. Company Films was rebuilt slowly. Smaller, quieter, no ego. No luxury lunches, no borrowed power. Just people who understood that working for Keanu Reeves meant representing something bigger than money or status. The story eventually leaked, as stories like this always do. Keanu never confirmed it, never denied it. He didn't need to. The truth spoke for itself, because that day was never about being locked out of a building. It was about being let into the truth. Keanu Reeves didn't fire his entire team because they failed to recognize him. He let them go because he recognized them. And that is the lesson that lingers. Character is revealed in the moments when we believe no one important is watching. Power doesn't corrupt. It exposes. Humility isn't weakness. It's clarity. That morning, standing outside his own office, Keanu Reeves didn't lose time. He gained vision. And once you truly see people for who they are, you can never unsee it.